this afternoon. Nice to see all of you all this evening for the first live session for 2022. And our session this afternoon is called Coping with the Pandemic. All right, so we are going to get a lot of tools, a lot of advice, a lot of information on how do we deal with the stress of this pandemic. Yes, this is stressful. I mean, look at me. I chop off all my hair. What's the stress? Chop off all my hair. No, I didn't. It wasn't because of the pandemic. I'm just saying, maybe not. All righty. So, welcoming you all. Right? I just want to take a moment to ask you all to share in the chat. Where are you from? Tell us where you're from. Let's put it in the chat. And are you a secondary school teacher or are you a primary school teacher? Right? Just share with us a little bit. Let's know who you are. Right? It's nice to know the people we are sharing our evening with. Right? Let's hear a little bit about you. While you're doing that, right, I'm just going to welcome everyone who just came in, and we are, right? Come on, I'm just waiting to see some of you, some of the comments. Where are you from? Come on, tell me where you're from. Where you're from? North, South, Grenada. Welcome, Grenada. All right.
Nice.
Nice. All right. I see secondary schools. Nice. Tell us where you're from. It's always nice to be part of the 21st century community. Nice. All right. So let me officially begin while you all are sharing where you're from. So our theme for this year is caring for the whole you in 2022. And we have been talking about things that we can do to really focus on ourselves, different aspects of ourselves. So this afternoon, our first live session this afternoon is going to be a session done with Dr. T, right? You all should recognize Dr. T because she was our professional who gave us lots of good advice last year when we did this series, You Can't Pour from an Empty Cup. So we are continuing to highlight that aspect of ourselves by this workshop this afternoon where we are talking about how do you cope in this pandemic. All right, so I'm going to hand over to Dr. T. She's going to tell us a little bit about herself and take it away. So Dr. T.
All righty. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me back. As a married mother of a 7-year-old and a 2-year-old, a 7-year-old who started kindergarten the fall before the pandemic, and having her home with me, doing virtual and distance learning. I always appreciated educators. But after that experience, let's just say I appreciate and honor and give you all the kudos, warm fuzzies, even more so in terms of that experience. And just wanted to thank you all for having me back today, let you know that I appreciate all that you all do. I know sometimes it goes, it's taken for granted, it goes unacknowledged. So if anybody didn't tell you, if nobody told you today that they appreciate what you do, I'm telling you today that I appreciate what you do, and stay the fight, stay the course, keep doing what you're doing. What you're doing is so important. I saw this meme that said, we have engineers and architects and aerospace engineers and all of these professionals that build bridges and build buildings and build spaceships, but it was a teacher that built them. So whenever I see that, it really just reminds me and speaks to how valuable what you all do. So we're going to get started today. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Thanks everyone for taking some time out. I do have one challenge that I always ask everyone to do that sits in one of my presentations is see what takeaway you get from the presentation, whether that's one takeaway point or something that you might do different or something that you may have heard, but during the presentation, you got a different point of view about it. I want to make sure that everybody's taking away at least one thing from the presentation today. So at the end, I'm definitely going to ask everyone share. During the presentation, if you have a question, please put it in the chat. We'll pause here and there to honor and address some of those questions. We'll also have some time at the end as well to have some question and answers, and also talk about those takeaway points that we're hoping everyone leaves with today. So let's go ahead and get started here. Okay, everybody seeing? We're good?
Yes, we're good.
All right, thanks, Latoya. So how to cope with pandemic exhaustion. How do we cope with this? I like this meme. I like memes. They speak to you sometimes, but this one caught my eye. And it was so interesting. I saw it the day before yesterday when I was kind of just reviewing for the presentation. So this came up on my social media feed, and I said, I have to share this with the 21st century educators because it just made me kind of chuckle a little bit to me, where she says, the only facial expression I've had since March 13th, 2020. Just this look of confusion, exhaustion. What in the world? What have I gotten myself into? It just seems like that face is what we've been feeling and exhibiting for the past, as we're going on 2 years of this and talking about exhaustion, 2 years of this. So anybody relate to this meme? I know I did, as even as a mom that had to switch to distant learning and working from home, all of that. So I thought this would be something that you all might relate to, this facial expression here. Does this feel familiar? Daily stresses that teachers go through and face during COVID. Am I safe? Are my students safe? How can I emotionally connect to my students online? How can I connect with them once we do return to the classroom? How do we do this with social distancing? What about my students that are struggling with the transition? What should I say to parents who are concerned about their educational development, their social development? And this is a big one that plays a lot into this pandemic exhaustion. Will it all change again tomorrow? Just as soon as we feel that we're kind of getting a hold of this, that we're getting a better understanding of it, that we've put some things into place and we're kind of getting into a routine, something else happened. We get a new variant. We have some other challenges that this pandemic just keeps throwing at us and throwing at us. All of that is a part of the exhaustion that we are feeling. The pandemic has disrupted various aspects of our life. We've lost our routine and predictability, things that we're kind of just used to doing that we took for granted. Some people have lost employment and income. Definitely a loss of independence and freedom when we think about being on lockdown and having to quarantine, possibly after exposure, loss of the future, because things just keep changing all the time, loss of entertainment and social life, being able to hang out with family, hang out with friends, having that outlet, graduation, celebrations, proms, weddings, even funerals, all of these things have changed. Illnesses, loss of health, and loss of control. And that is a big part of this exhaustion too, because we feel that all of this is happening to us and there's not much that we can do about it. So I have a little short video to show you all that kind of, I feel, summarizes what we're all experiencing right now during this pandemic. So let me switch out of here. Give me 2 seconds. Let's see here. Okay, here we go. So if you have your volume up, I'm just giving you fair warning. But here we go.
Hey, so as some of you guys might know, I'm a music teacher, and I found that one of the best ways that I can process the whole transition to online learning and teaching is to write a song. So I wrote a song. I'd like to share that with you guys now. Here we go. Hey, so as some of you guys might know, I'm a
All righty, who's feeling like that? Anybody? I know I'm feeling like that. All of those different things that we talked about in our circle of ways that the pandemic has been impacting us, sometimes it just really gets you to the point where you just want to scream and yell. And today we want to take some time to see how we can get through this, stay the course, making sure that we have some coping mechanisms to deal with this, cope with this, get through this, keep us motivated, give ourselves some pause so we can get some rest to deal with this. All righty. Okay, this is me. I'm Dr. Tenille. Whole name, Dr. Tenille Richardson Kwamina. I just go by Dr. Tenille for short. But I've been in the mental health field for about 20 years in various capacities, including case management, mental health, counseling. I do some adjunct teaching as well, and worked in various administrative roles. And as I discussed, I have a 7-year-old, a 2-year-old that has been through this as well. We have to also remember that it's not just us that are going through it, it's our kids, it's our family, it's our loved ones as well. So they're all in this together, we're all in this together, and we all can support each other as well. One of the things that I always try to come from in terms of approach is prevention. So I really give honor to everyone that is here tonight, spending some time learning some tips, so that when things do occur, when you do find yourself exhausted, we could possibly prevent you getting even more exhausted by having some tools, some coping mechanisms, some things into place to provide that support. So does everybody have a pen and paper? Everybody have a pen and paper? I'll give everybody 2 seconds to do that. Okay, because I have a quick assessment that I want everybody to participate in. Always, yo, you got mine. Thank you, Avalon. Thank you. All righty. So I think if it's helpful sometimes to assess ourselves, to check in with ourselves, to really get an idea of how we're feeling. A lot of times when we don't do that, we have really good imaginations. Things seem to be a lot bigger than they actually are. And things could be a lot smaller than they actually are. So sometimes it's really good to just take some time and do like a quick assessment, a quick check-in to give you an idea of where you are. So everybody has their pen and paper. We're going to do a quick assessment here. And those who would like to share where you are at the end, that would be great, because remember, we're all in this together. It helps to know that you're not the only one that might be feeling how you're feeling. So I do encourage everyone to definitely share if you're comfortable. So let me switch back to the PowerPoint here so everybody can see. All righty. Okay. So COVID burnout assessment. This is really speaking to that exhaustion that we talked about. So for each one of these questions, there might be several questions to it. So what I'm encouraging you to do is, for the questions that do have multiple parts, you can answer multiple yeses or no. So what we're doing is making sure that you do answer the different parts of it. So take note of it. As you see with question number 1, it has 3 parts to it. So if you're feeling that either part of it resonates with you, you can put a yes. So for question number 1, you might have 3 yeses, okay? So do you become tired very easily? And this would be over the time frame of, let's say, the past 6 months. Are you finding yourself more fatigued than energetic? More tired earlier in the day than normal? So are you starting off your day tired? Number 2, are you hearing from friends and family? You don't look so good. You look tired and feeling really annoyed and ready to lash out. Number 3, do you find yourself working harder, working longer hours, accomplishing less, and or making more mistakes than usual? Okay. Number 4, are you feeling cynical, helpless, unenthusiastic about life or the near future? Are you feeling sad throughout the day, crying frequently, feeling like you're constantly on the verge of tears? Okay. Number 6, are you having trouble remembering things, finding it hard to focus, or feeling like you're in a brain fog? Have you begun to withdraw from usual activities or canceling plans with family and friends, whether that is in real life or virtually? Have you been self-isolating beyond quarantining and being on lockdown? Beyond that, but have you been isolating in ways that are not COVID related? Are you experiencing any physical complaints, once again, that are not COVID related? So are you having headaches, body aches, different pains that you can't easily explain, a cold that won't go away? Okay. Are you unable to complete your daily tasks, feeling surprised when the day is suddenly over and you're unsure where all that time went or what you even did with that time? Do the things and people who usually bring you joy feel like too much work, a hassle, or just something you're not even interested in anymore? Okay, so everybody take 2 seconds here, add up your yeses. And this is our scoring sheet. This is our rubric. This is our answering sheet here. So if you have 0 to 3 yeses, you're doing fine. But one of the things that we always encourage everyone to do, especially at New Creations Caribbean, is to do self-checks, to go in and frequently check in with how you're doing mentally, because this might change. As we know, this is a changing thing that we're going through. Some days you might be doing really well. Some days you might not be doing as well. So we always encourage our clients to check in with themselves, preferably once a week. I encourage clients to, on Sunday or on a Saturday, either towards the beginning or end of the week, so you can kind of look back to see how you felt during that week, but doing that self-assessment on a regular basis. Okay. 4 to 6. If you have 4 to 6 yeses, you aren't experiencing burnout yet, but if you don't take a step back, you could head there really soon. So try and take a break, take in some of the coping mechanisms that we have now. Remember, being preventative versus having to intervene once you are burnt out. Maybe give yourself a day off, try some self-care and reaching out to friends for support. And we also have 7 to 10 or more. If you have this, you're looking at some burnout here. Immediately begin to pay attention to how you're feeling, what the situation is. There are a lot of solutions. We'll go through some of them today, but it's important to start and take the first step. So would anybody like to share in the chat? Latoya, could you check the chat for me to see if anybody would like to share their results or how they feel they're doing with this?
Sure.
Thank you. And I'll give everybody a second. Don't be shy. Like I said, we're all in this together.
Allison says she got 46. Charmaine says she got 2.
Okay. Charmaine, we need to know what you're doing to be where you are and coping with this. And yeah, go ahead.
So I was going to say that Deb said she got 9.
Okay.
And Elizabeth says she got 46.
46. Okay. All righty. So one of the things as we talk about, Toya, anybody else before I kind of move on?
Yeah, we have, let me check who the last person I said, Elizabeth. We have Vicky with 46. We have Cicely with 5.
Okay.
Salomon, forgive me if I pronounce it badly. Salomon Sousa with 7 to 10.
Okay.
Shermaine with 7. And then we have, the last one I have here is Ayana with 4 to 6.
Okay. Thank you all for sharing. And we'll talk a little bit more about this towards maybe like the middle of the presentation, but it's really important to share and to kind of check in with each other. As you all see, we're probably averaging about 4 to 6. We do have a few that came in 7 to 10 and some one person 0 to 3. So checking in with each other, saying, how have you been coping these past 2 years? What has worked for you? We are a resource within this group. It's a resource. And being able to tap into what other people have done, what worked, what didn't work, that's also a resource as well. So once again, I'm glad everybody is here because we're sounding like we're averaging right at like the 4 to 6, which means we aren't experiencing the burnout yet, but if we don't take some steps, we might be getting there really soon. So it's a really good thing that everyone is here today. All righty. So an onion can help us cope. I know you're probably thinking, Dr. Tenille, what are you talking about with an onion? What does an onion have to do with COVID? How am I supposed to eat an onion a day? Am I supposed to be cooking with it? What are you talking about? I know some of you guys are looking at the screen. I can't see all of your faces right now, but y'all might have this look like, what is she talking about? So an onion can help us cope with COVID, and you don't have to eat it. I promise. But when we think about an onion, there are a lot of layers to it. There are a lot of little small nuances to an onion. An onion is just not one big ball. When you cut it, there are many parts to it, so many layers. So we can think about some of the ways the pandemic has impacted us, the different layers of our life. How has it impacted us? So for example, in terms of work, we had to switch from face-to-face to virtual. So are there some other layers? I'll give everybody an opportunity to put some layers that they find might have been impacted with COVID. So Latoya, if you can check the chat for me as people type in some of their responses, appreciate it. Thank you.
Just remind them of the question again.
Okay, yes. What are the different layers that COVID, what are the different aspects of your life that has been impacted by COVID? So for example, work. With work, we had to switch from face-to-face to virtual. What are some other ways that COVID may have impacted your life?
All right, Deb says social life and definitely work.
Definitely work. Yes, definitely social life.
Yeah. Avalon says family life.
Absolutely.
Salarisha, I apologize if I'm pronouncing your name badly. I think it's Salarisha, right? She says physical and mental well-being.
Okay.
Elizabeth says it could not go to the playground or savannah for exercise. Yes, right? Shimon says work and family. Right, and Deb says spiritual life.
Good.
Ayana says online school with a toddler.
Oh,
social
yes.
Life, yeah, social life, work life. Betty says greater responsibilities at home. Elizabeth says coffee or tea time with my sisters. That was impacted. Yeah.
Okay.
Nayan, I think this is the last comment. Nayan says family, social, work, my mental and spiritual well-being. And then Shaman says spiritual activities.
Yes, yes. Perfect. You guys really did a good job in pulling some of those layers apart. So there are a lot of different aspects of our life. And here are some of the layers. You all mentioned spiritual, you mentioned emotional and mental, environmental, which spoke to the family, being at home, having to create a workspace, financial, occupational, you all talked about work, social, we talked about, you know, not being able to have coffee and tea with our sisters, intellectual, one of the questions in the burnout was asking, you know, do you find yourself being in like a brain fog and not being able to really put thoughts together? So these are the different layers that even outside of COVID are an aspect of our life that we want to make sure that we acknowledge, okay? One of the things I want to say here is, as we go through these layers, I'm encouraging everyone to kind of do another self-assessment and see which layer you feel for yourself has been impacted the most, that is the most challenging, that you want to make sure that you make a priority and figure out how you're going to cope and navigate that one. So that way you're kind of getting, you're kind of addressing what is impacting you the most right now. We talk about the exhaustion. If we deal with what is causing us the most challenge, we're hoping that that can motivate us, get us going, get us in that place where we're feeling like we can stay the distance because we address that really big layer that is impacting us right now. So the individual layer, this is speaking from several ones, the intellectual piece, the emotional piece, the social piece. One of the things that definitely encouraging everyone to remember, and this has been my mantra throughout this, is Dr. Tenille, control your controllables. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, but it helps us to remember that, yes, there are a lot of things that are going on that we can't control, but figuring out what it is that we can do within our realm of control where we can take care of ourselves. So for example, connecting with one person a day, it may not be coffee, tea, or being able to have Sunday lunch with family, but it could possibly be a FaceTime or a phone call. Get moving, getting outside, letting outside in, opening up the blinds, pulling back the curtain. I thought about this yesterday. I went outside on my back porch. It was a beautiful day. And I thought about this and I wanted to share it with you all. I leaned back. And when I leaned back, my head was kind of like hanging off the side of the couch. And it was in this perfect position where my body was still like under the porch and it was cool, but my face was leaning back and the sun was just shining on my face. And I did it just to stretch my back really quickly. But in that moment, it was such a like energizing, peaceful, tranquil place. And I just sat there and I literally just sat there with my head hanging off the back of the couch in the sun for like 10 minutes because I just really felt it was almost like resetting me for the day. It was a crazy day, but finding ways to be able to figure out what is your calm, what is your tranquility, what is your letting outside in, being mindful of your sleep and your mindfulness, checking in with, okay, I'm feeling stressed today. Where am I feeling the stress in my body? Am I carrying it in my shoulders? Do I need to stretch a little bit? Giving yourself some grace, some flexibility, and managing your expectations because things are changing so quickly and because things are not operating like we used to. We have to give ourselves the flexibility and to be able to manage that expectation of things might not necessarily work out and be what we're used to it being. So take care of your mental health. That's a big one. Make sure that it's a priority and that we're taking care of it. So back to that control your controllables. See how we have this kind of white circle in the middle? These are examples of things that we could possibly control in the midst of this pandemic and the exhaustion that we are feeling. Focusing on your attitude, my positive attitude, maybe taking a break from the news, finding something fun to do at home, maybe limiting social media. It's kind of the same idea in terms of taking a break from the news. Sometimes we get inundated with a lot of the things that are going on, and sometimes we just need to let our brain take a break. We talked about this, your kindness and grace, not only to others, but also to yourself. Managing your own social distancing. We had, what's your pod? Who is your pod that you kind of have gotten to an agreement that, we're all kind of taking the same risk management and, we're on the same page and we can spend time together. Who's your pod? Following government recommendations in terms of risk management, but things that we can't control. So these are some of the things that we could possibly look into not focusing and not spending so much time on. I found this one, this makes me chuckle every time, but the amount of toilet paper at the store. How long will this last? How others are reacting and what others are doing. What are other people's motives in this? Trying to predict, okay, what is this new variant going to do? What is it? How is this going to impact the actions of others? And if others are following the rules of social distancing. So there are some things that are not outside of there are some things that are outside of our control, but also remember that there's some things in your control as well, and things that you can focus on and actively do to manage your risk, take care of your mental health, stay connected with others as well. Anxiety is a big part of this exhaustion that we're feeling. Anxiety is being stressed and worried about things that we can't control, things that are in the future. Right now, a lot of our future is uncertain because of this pandemic. Things are changing by the day, by the minute, as new variants and all of these things are coming out. So it's important to acknowledge that if you are experiencing anxiety, having an idea of what that looks like and feels like for you. Is that shortness of breath? Does that, your palms sweating? Is that a faster heart rate? Figuring out what that anxiety is. And you want to make sure you're building in some time to relax during your day on a consistent basis to buffer some of this stress and anxiety, whether that looks like breathing, yoga, reading, communing with nature. That's what I was doing yesterday. I had my face over the back of the sofa, just letting the sun give me some vitamin D and warmth and just calm, listening to music or watching a funny movie, whatever helps you to let go for a little bit. So we also have grief as well. And a lot of this is grieving what we had, what our life used to look like, what we used to be able to do, but allowing yourself to grieve, not necessarily fighting it, because when we fight it, it makes it even a bigger challenge for us because our body kind of gets into this fight or flight response. But sometimes we have to deal with the loss instead of trying to quickly push past it or stuff it down or avoid it. But it's okay to be sad and frustrated at the loss of the routine, the norms, the social connections. It's okay to feel that way. It's okay to feel afraid about the virus and what we're going to expect in the future. But the idea is not to get stuck and live in that space. Make room for these feelings and do your best to move forward and make a workable plan at the same time. So figuring out what coping mechanisms work for you, putting those coping mechanisms on repeat is not a one and done, but it might be something that works for you on a regular basis. So my new thing is, well, at least once a week, I'm gonna go outside if it's a sunny day and let the sun shine on my face. So putting that into a workable plan for you. And happiness triggers. When we usually think of triggers, we think of things that trigger us that impact our mental health in a not so good way. So things that trigger us and make us sad, things that trigger us and make us mad or depressed. But we also need to know what our happiness triggers are. This is one of the things that you can control, figuring out what makes you happy and how you can create and replicate that. So is it a hug from a loved one? I know for me, clean sheets. I love when sheets are just coming out of the dryer, they're warm, you have the fabric softener smell to it. Having a favorite meal, an act of kindness. This is the new one I just discovered yesterday, you guys, sunlight or time outside, your favorite smell. Listening to your favorite music or watching your favorite movie. I know someone talked about coffee and tea, moving your body, maybe doing some virtual exercising classes or learning a new dance. So wanted to give a few minutes here for anyone that would like to share their happiness triggers. Any of these resonate with you or any of them that aren't on here that you found are something that you've been using and kind of, triggering that happiness for you that's outside of what we have here. So Latoya, if you can check the chat for us.
Sure.
Thank you.
Let's see. All right. So Allison has favorite music and reading.
Oh, reading. That's a good one. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Elizabeth says that she watched Christmas movies throughout.
Oh, I'm gonna have to do that.
Yeah.
I like that one. And you guys don't laugh at me. Don't tell nobody, but my Christmas tree is still up. And you know why? Because it was my happiness trigger over this holiday. I liked my Christmas lights and I said, you know what? I'm gonna keep it up for a little bit. This is making me feel good. So I feel you with the Christmas movies. I should have been watching Christmas movies the past month or so while my Christmas tree was still up. What other happiness triggers we have there?
Deb has doing activities, including dancing with my nieces and nephews.
Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah. And right. those nieces and nephews will always, they'll keep you hip to the new dances, and they're always ready to teach you some good stuff there. What else?
Yeah, Professor Gibbs has the beach or anytime in nature. Yeah. Marianne also agrees going to the beach is that happiness trigger. Yeah, that was the last comment so far.
Okay, all righty. So thanks everybody for sharing your happiness triggers, because some of you all have given some inspiration. I know I might be watching some Christmas movies this weekend. They're still saved on my Netflix watch list. So once again, sharing what works for you. You all are a resource within yourselves. Share that. We talked about the spiritual layer. Someone brought that up when we were asking the different parts and how it's been impacted. Because of quarantining and isolating, fellowship has looked a little differently. We've had to switch a lot of our fellowship to virtual and being online. But there's still ways to still tap into that spiritual layer and using it as a coping mechanism or a resource. Listening to your favorite spiritual music, reading a scripture, and figuring out ways to still connect to that spiritual fellowship, that spiritual support system, whether that's virtually, whether that's, through phone calls. So looking for ways to still have that as a coping mechanism for you. Home is usually our safe space, our go-to place, our place of solitude. And because of COVID, outside forces has invaded our home space. We're working from home now. We are going to school from home. So it's changing our relationships. It's changing how we interact with our family, our physical space and boundaries, all of those aspects. So when it comes to the relationship layer, one of the things that I'm encouraging everyone to do is take a more vulnerable approach. When you have time to connect, be intentional with it. Put down the electronic devices. We spend so much time on our computers and phones and things like that doing work in school. We forget that sometimes we have to shut that off and focus on quality time together. Be curious. Ask, how are you doing? How do you feel about the new variant? Showing empathy towards each other, and also asking for help or discussing how you could possibly help someone, whether that's, the relationship with your partner, your kids, your in-laws, your family. Because of COVID, we have been separated from our family. The borders have closed, visa restrictions, quarantining, exposure, all of these things have happened, and it hurts. We have to stay away from our family. We've become so avoidant that it's almost hard to think of ways to reconnect and or stay connected. So it's important to acknowledge how you're feeling, talking about how much you miss your family members, how you miss being able to have lunch and dinner, Sunday lunch together. Looking for technology in a way to do some of the mundane things that you used to do together, maybe face to face, but doing that over FaceTime. So maybe cooking together over FaceTime or watching a movie together, maybe delivering a care package to someone that might, need a pick-me-up or might not be feeling so well. And figuring out ways to still connect their activities, their games. Because of COVID, a lot of companies have developed virtual games that you can play chess with somebody. You can go on a virtual tour of Paris together. On Netflix and Disney, there are ways where you can actually watch the movie and synchronize your television so that you can watch them together. That's a good way we can tap into that technology. When it comes to the children layer, we want to make sure that we're showing empathy and patience, that we're calmly setting limits when needed, trying to create a structure here. I'm not sure. Toya, can you see my face right now?
Yes, yes.
Okay. All right. So I wanted to share something that I created for my 7-year-old when she was home. And this is what we call her schedule clock. And what it is because I would be busy in session because I was working from home, and it kind of gave her some independence, and gave me some space to be able to take care of things I needed to take care of. But there's sections of here. So for example, from 11:30 to 12, she had lunch. And from 12 to 1:30, she was back in school. And from 1:30 to 3, she might had some playtime or free time. She could play some games. And so each one of these colors represent the activity that she was supposed to be doing within that time. And it really helped her stay focused. It helped her have an idea of what her schedule was going to be like. Kids like structure, it gives them comfort. If you ever decide to do something like this, it was just a cheap clock that I ordered, maybe like $5 or so, took it apart, got some Sharpies. This is a teacher in me, got some Sharpies, colored all of this in. Only thing I would recommend, get the thick end Sharpies because I had the little ones and it took me a really long time to color any sections with the fine tip. But looking for creative ways to be able to speak to kids at their level. And also remembering too that kids have a lot of imagination. And when we don't talk with them about what's going on, of course, at an age appropriate level, but when we're withholding information, their imagination has the tendency to run. And when we don't talk about it, they don't really know. So figuring out a way to talk with your kids about their fears, their challenges, so that we can kind of give them a realistic view of what is going on. With boundaries, I used the red light approach. I had 3 different pieces of paper. So red means that mommy is in a really important meeting. So right now, I would have a red piece of construction paper on the door. That means that the door is locked, you cannot interrupt. If you're hungry, you need a snack, you're on your own, you have to figure out what it is. If it was something where they could possibly interrupt, if it was a real emergency, I might have the yellow construction paper on. And if it was something where they could just come in, they could talk freely, I had that flexibility, I would have the green construction paper on. So that helped my kids understand what was going on. It helped me to communicate with them, even in the midst of me having to work and do those kinds of things. All righty, so physical space and boundaries at home, working from home. Set your hours. When I say that, not saying that you do not have to, stay within your obligated hours of work, but figuring out what is your time that you're cutting off. So for example, I put myself on a chopping block. 6 o'clock is my cutoff. We have dinner at 7 together. So I try as much as possible to not have clients. At 6 o'clock, I pause on my emails. Even though I still have the anxiety of, oh my gosh, I hope it's not a whole bunch of emails that I'm missing. I have to say, okay, Tenille, okay. At 9 o'clock, after the kids are in bed and you've had some time to kind of decompress for today, you can pick up your email and you have 30 minutes to answer your email. So figuring out where you can cut off that time and create some space for yourself and space with your family. Creating a dedicated workspace. Making sure you take your lunch break. A lot of times what we've been doing is eating at the computer while we're working from home. Take your days off seriously. Don't get into let me do this one little thing, or let me send this one little email, because that one little email turns into, okay, well, I see this email, I need to answer this one, I need to answer that one. And before you know it, on your day off, you've already spent 2 hours on emails. Practice saying no. Sometimes when we're working from home or we have a more flexible, what appears to others to be a more flexible schedule, people have the tendency to say, oh, well, can you just run this errand here? Or can you do this for me? But being able to practice saying no, change your clothes. And you probably are hearing my little one fussing in the background. They just came home. But change your clothes. Try not to work in your pajamas. That gives your body and your brain the idea that, okay, we're switching out of home mode, we're switching into work mode. And then when work is over, put on your casual, your pajamas, your play clothes, your sweatpants, so that your brain knows, okay, we are switching out of our day. So we switch on our day, our work day, and then we're switching out of our work day. So same thing with finding your work ritual. Is there a mug that you used to use all the time when you were at work? Having that mug also signals, okay, this is the start of my day. When you wash that mug and put it up for the night, that's the indication that this is the end of the day. Maybe have a fake commute. We're working from home, so we don't have that 15, 20 minutes, sometimes an hour plus, depending on traffic, right? Time to listen to our podcasts or audios and books, things like that, and find your work from home community. Remember, you all are a resource. Support each other through this. Okay. So one of the things to look out for when it comes to the occupational and education layer, technology like Zoom and WebEx, they've created that space for us to be able to continue to work during this pandemic. But one of the things that happens, and some of you may have joined us for this presentation, but Zoom fatigue is real. So being mindful of how you're feeling when you get off of Zoom, having to look at so many different faces all at once, and then having to look at our face looking back at us during, say, we're not designed to do that. We're designed to interact with maybe, one-on-one or a few people at a time and be able to take in the nonverbals, but we're not watching our face as we respond to them. So it puts us in this overdrive state and makes us tired. One of the things a few of the things we can do to combat that is taking breaks, stretch break, even if it's for 2 minutes. We talked about this, eating away from the computer, possibly substituting video calls with emails and phone calls. And once again, I'm gonna keep reminding you all, being your own support network there. Okay. Self-care at work. Self-care is not selfish. A lot of times we feel that if we take a few minutes for ourselves, we're being selfish, but we can't show up and be the best teachers, be the best mothers, fathers, caregivers, sisters, brothers, friends that we can be if we're not taking care of ourselves. So like we said, make it a daily part of your routine. Rely on teamwork. Have an accountability partner. That's part of the teamwork. Tapping into a friend you might have at work that knows you, that can sense when you aren't doing well, when you might be on the verge of burnout, where you might be moving from that 4 to 6 category to that 7 and 10 plus category, because they know you, they know your demeanor. They can say, "Ooh, Dr. T, are you doing okay? You seem a little different today." Because a lot of times when we're on the day-to-day grind and we're exhausted, we're not taking the time to check in with ourselves. And sometimes we need someone that can look at us and see that things are different and remind us and inform us that maybe we might need to do something to take care of ourselves. So having that check-in and encouragement. Remember, y'all, we have 100 and almost 20 people on it. So there's some accountability partners here. You can definitely tap into that. When it comes to the community layer of this whole big onion of COVID, it's normal to experience anxiety as your community begins to open up. The whole question of returning back to work, what is that going to look like? How am I going to manage your risk? the anxiety. You can just already feel the anxiety starting to grow, because there are a lot of unknowns. There are a lot of things you will be outside of your control. But remember, we do have some controllables that we can control. So one of the ways we can counter this part of the COVID onion, this layer, is focusing on the facts. What is the actual numbers, following your feelings, understanding how your school might be managing the risk, getting an idea of the policy and the safety measures. So you have something to refer back to. You have some controllables within your environment. So find out those risks, the ways they're managing risk, those policies. All those things are really important. Will it completely erase the anxiety? No. But will it give you something to go with, something that you know that is within your control? Absolutely. If you're starting to become extremely isolated, this goes back to that accountability partner, or engaging in reckless behavior that might be a red flag that you're moving into that burnout zone, that you need to take a step back and take care of yourself there. Okay. Our new normal. That's pretty much what we're calling this phase after the pandemic, because it's going to be here. It's going to be here for a while. So this is going to be our new normal. How do we address this new normal? You can do small baby steps to kind of deal with your anxiety, increasing your level of exposure, little by little, giving you opportunity to manage how you're feeling at this level of exposure. So giving yourself that small step-by-step way to cope with the new normal. Or you could just do the flooding approach. It means you're jumping into the deep end. You're gonna just go straight to the grocery store and go shopping and just go for it. So you're not doing those small steps in terms of, okay, let me see how I feel by visiting a friend, or let me see how I feel by just being out at the beach. So figuring out which one of these approaches works for you. Okay. And we talked about this, regular mental checkups. Prioritize your onion layers. We talked about that at the beginning. Figure out which one of these you want to address first, and try to do one layer at a time. Because if we bite into a big piece of onion, we take a big bite can be too much. So if we try to deal with all of these layers all at once, it could be very overwhelming. But if we break it down into smaller layers and deal with this layer first, and then deal with the next layer, it's more manageable and it's not as exhausting. Okay, so not today, COVID, not today. In conclusion, as we start our new normal, I'm encouraging everyone to look at what changes, habits, rituals, lessons that you've learned over the past 2 years that have worked for you, and bring them into your new normal. So for example, my family, we didn't have dinner together. My husband and I would feed the kids and then put them to bed, and then him and I would eat dinner together. But during this whole thing, my 7-year-old said, Mommy, Daddy, why can't we eat dinner together? So we started doing that. That is one of the things that we implemented during COVID that we're bringing into our new normal. Not taking things for granted. I don't know if COVID didn't teach us that, I don't know what would. Sacrifices are hard, missing birthdays, limes, traveling, trips, having to wear a mask, dealing with isolation. All of this stuff is hard, but it's saving a life, possibly yours, possibly your family or somebody else's. So the postponed hugs, kisses, parties, all of these are sacrifices that, we have to temporarily deal with. But as we move into our new normal, we're hoping that as much as possible, we can get back to some of those things that we love and cherish. All righty, so I'm Dr. Tenille. I'm the CEO and Clinical Director of New Creations Caribbean, where we provide innovative solutions for your behavioral and mental health. So if you or anyone that you know, a loved one, could utilize some counseling or therapy services, we are definitely here to provide some support. We offer face-to-face sessions as well, of course, managing risk, but we also provide virtual sessions across the Caribbean as well. So now is the time challenge. I'm going to check in with everybody. What's your takeaways? What did you learn? What will you do differently? And Latoya, if you could tap into the chat room for me and see what everybody is sharing, that'd be great.
Sure. So what did we take away from today's session? Let's see what you all have to share with us.
Mm-hmm. And if you have a question, you can put that in now. Now would be our time for questions as well.
All right, so when you type, you can type question or you can type takeaway and then share. While I'm waiting for persons to type, I will share my takeaway. I wrote down a few things, but you know how something always jumps out at you. And what jumped out at me, Dr. T, was being vulnerable. That jumped out at me. I was like, oh my God, I need to.
Yeah, that's a hard one.
Yeah, you know, sometimes we're struggling, but we don't want to say that we are struggling. We don't want to say that we are stressed. So that was my takeaway. All right. Allison shares that for her takeaway is that the most alarming thing was the score that she got at the beginning of the session. Right? She got a score of 9 and she didn't think that it was burnout. She thought it was just you know, coping. Now she has to implement some coping mechanisms.
Absolutely.
Right? Ayana says, I would try to do more things that makes me happy so that I don't get burnt out as before. I would strive to do the best for my daughter and myself. Right? Professor Gibbs says, attend to your onion. There are many layers that play a part. Right? Telerisha says, definitely explore more of my happiness triggers and focus on addressing one layer at a time. Margaret also says the same thing. Her takeaway is happiness triggers. Right? Shaman says, keep on cherishing the things we have control over. Recognize my limitations. Be flexible and accept the things I have no control over.
Yes, indeed.
Yes. Professor Gibbs says, take off days. Seriously.
Yes, take them serious. Yes.
Yeah, Maurice says, I love the traffic light construction paper to manage kids and help them manage themselves. Right? Professor Gibbs says, I am guilty of packing in errands. Right? Stacy says, try to switch off. That was her takeaway. Try to switch off, leave that one more thing and take my days. Nice. So that's it for takeaways. She also says she loves the traffic lights idea. Right? So that's it for takeaways. We just have any questions, people? While we're waiting on questions, I'm sharing Elizabeth and Kizzy, their takeaway just came in. Kizzy says, my mental health is important too, so step away. She wants to step away. And Elizabeth's takeaway was allowing yourself to be vulnerable in relationships. Reduce my work hours to what is reasonable. Right. So guys, are there any questions? Come on, share your questions with us.
I don't have a question, but I didn't hear you read my takeaway.
Apologies.
I would usually feel guilty when I take like leisure time and I know I have so much work to do. I would feel guilty, but after
Yeah.
today's session, I'm not gonna bother with that guilt. I'm just gonna take some time more for myself.
Well done, well done.
Because that guilt, that contributes to your exhaustion. It really does.
Again, we're just pausing for some questions. Anyone?
Well, I have my hand up. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Thank you so very much for pulling so many things together that we really did not, well, I did not consider so many different things. I know I'm tired. I know that I am tired, but the full extent of it and how it was impacting, I didn't consider. You know what? When we first started, there were so many training sessions and so many workshops and the rush and the deadline and that perhaps contributed most. In cases like in cases like those, we can't say no to the employer.
Yes, indeed.
But then what's the alternative? Because you are extremely tired. I was sent on one that was supposed to have been 4 weeks, 2 hours a week, that ended up being 6 weeks and maybe 14 hours a week with the amount of work that wasn't there. What do you do in instances like that? Do I take a day off and just breathe?
Absolutely. So if you know that you have trainings coming, they might be last minute, they might not tell you until a day or two before, but the time that you have in between finding out about the training and actually starting and completing the training, looking for ways to come up with that plan, your strategy. What am I going to do to possibly take care of myself during this training? Am I going to make sure I have lunches packed the night before, because I might have to really literally sit at my computer and eat my lunch? Or do I plan to have a day off? Or do I talk with those in my household to ask for additional support during that time? Because I know that I'm going to be exhausted. So using that time between when you find out about it and when you know, to come up with that plan to take care of yourself before, during, and or maybe even after.
I like that idea. I would have to do it beforehand because we think that is going to be one way, but the experience have taught over the last.
It's another.
It's not. Yes. Thanks very much.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
All right. I have a question from Avalon. She says, what do you do? What can you suggest that she do to help your toddler cope better with online preschool?
Okay. In terms of making sure we understand where they are developmentally and having preparation, talking with them before, giving them an idea of what their day is going to look like, when their day is going to end, when they get a break, so that they don't look at this as I'm going to be sitting at the computer all day, every day. It ends at 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock, having something in place. Okay, when your day ends, we get to take a break. We get to have a snack. We get to maybe have time with mommy or daddy or your sister or siblings, something that they could look forward to kind of help them get through that day. But role playing, practicing, sitting down at the computer with them so they understand the expectations. I mean, it's hard for a toddler. And at the same time, managing our expectations when it comes to that, because we are wanting them to sit and be still. And then we end up stressing ourselves about it because they're a toddler, and developmentally, them sitting in front of a computer for long periods of time is difficult. So when we get anxious, of course, that anxiety transfers to them and they get anxious. So managing our expectations, role playing with them about expectations, and helping them understand when the end game is, when is the end point, when they can shut that down and get back to kind of being themselves and being a toddler and playing and doing all the wonderful things that toddlers do.
Okay.
Hi,
Um,
Dr. Tenille.
Hello, hello, how are you?
Hi, this is Margaret.
Hi,
So I just
Margaret.
want to say to Avalon about the toddler. Try not to compare her toddler with the other toddlers,
Yes,
because some of them, they talk a lot, and that could bog you down or get you frustrated, and you pass on that anxiety, because I
absolutely.
actually experienced that with my little grandson. He wasn't able to talk. And these others, they are speaking just like we are speaking. But
Mhm.
now he's there 2 years, so I have seen him progress, you know. So, you know, you work with your kid and pray a lot.
Absolutely. And thank you for sharing, Margaret. And this is what I mean. You guys are your own resource and sharing what has worked, what hasn't worked. And Margaret, when you say that, I'm reminded of this, once again, a meme that it was like a picture of a box of popcorn. And it said, when you pop your popcorn, not all the popcorn kernels pop at the same time. All of them pop at different points. You might have a toddler that is able to talk and has already popped and become from a kernel to a popcorn, but eventually your kid will pop. So it's making sure that we understand that each kid is different. They have their own timelines of when they're going to pop from a kernel to a piece of popcorn. So like you said, managing our expectations and just supporting them through wherever they are in their developmental journey.
all right. I see Elizabeth's hand is up.
Yes.
And that will be our last question.
Thanks very much. I'm sorry to be pushing you over the 1 hour.
It's fine, it's fine.
But one of the things that I have experienced, and I'm sure everyone here, is the number of deaths around us that were suddenly sprung on children, so that they are now with single parent households, or they're with the orphans or so. And the teacher is placed in a situation where we have to try to come up with ways to help the child cope. Would that be a workshop that you may consider in the future?
That's a good suggestion, because Elizabeth, as you were speaking, I recall a personal experience with that, and yeah, I mean, Leanne, we could keep it in Leanne and Dr. T, something we could look at.
Yes.
Thanks for that suggestion.
Mhm.
Yes.
That is a real tough situation to deal with, and parents and teachers need that support. So thank you for bringing that to and reminding of us of that need, but it's definitely there.
So thank you guys for your participation today. Thank you so much, Dr. T, for sharing. Let me put on my camera. Oh my goodness, I'm sorry. All right, so because you're just hearing this voice in the background. Right, so thank you everyone for participating. Right, you all made this session a success. We want to thank Dr. T for again sharing the wealth of knowledge that she has. I mean, I'm sure we all got some excellent advice coming out of this. I mean, I got a lot of aha moments, a lot of wow, I didn't think about that. We got a lot of those kinds of moments. So yes, definitely. Let's use our emojis and just do a little virtual clap, a little virtual thumb. Yes, just send out a little expression of love and support to Dr. T.
Thank you all for having me. I appreciate it. You guys let me be active with my mission of preventing versus intervention when it comes to your mental health. Because once we get to that intervention, it's so much more difficult to take care of our mental health. And I promise you, y'all will never look at an onion the same way.
Most definitely. It's always easier, guys, to maintain your head and chop off all of it because of stress. Come on. Just joking. All right, so 21st century educators, a couple of reminders before we go. All right. So again, we are caring for the whole you in 2022. So we have done some sessions on mental health, right? We're going to do some professional sessions later this month. We have on the 24th of February, we have art in the classroom. It's going to be with Camille Wooding. So you can check out that, right? Again, on the 24th of February. And then on the 3rd of March, we have a session on Genially, right, on gamification in the classroom. And then on 10th of March, we have a session on financial planning. So we have a few things coming up, right? So at the end, definitely going to be well balanced all around. So again, thank you guys for coming to our session today. We hope you got a lot of useful takeaways from it. Thank you, Dr. T. Thank you to all the participants. Thank you to those who were vulnerable enough to share, to ask questions, to give feedback. We want to say thank you. And we pray that this community continues to grow and develop. Let me put in a plug, right, for the fitness part of it. We're talking about mental health and professionals. Talk about the fitness. What challenges are you doing for this month? This month, I am going to do a hill challenge every weekend. So I'm going to share with you all. I carried my sister to a hill challenge last Saturday. And at one point, she was like, I think I see heaven because you bring me to kill me here. I said, no, man, it's experience. Come on. So do a little challenge. Go out. Your challenge is to get active 1 day a week. Just 1 day a week. Do a little bit more, right? Go out, as Tenille said, get that sunshine in, get a little active. All right? We're working on mental, physical, emotional, professional, right? Working on the whole you in 2022. Thank you guys for being with us. Bye, everybody.